Star Wars is now just a little over 1 month away from its official release by writer and director J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, as well as creator George Lucas, that is all set and ready to end the Skywalker saga and the sequel trilogy itself. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, we do know that this movie is going to be a very important film to Disney and Lucasfilm, and to, of course, the Star Wars community, since it really is a historical film in the process. It's going to be, by far, the most important film, not just by Disney and Lucasfilm, but for the Star Wars franchise in and on itself, because it is the very end of the Skywalker saga that started back in 1977, and a lot of fans are just crossing their fingers that J.J. Abrams is going to be able to knock this movie out of the park and mark it down as the best film of the sequel trilogy, if not perhaps even a fan favorite of the entire Skywalker saga. Now, on top of all of this, there has been a lot of worry about this movie among many Star Wars fans, anything ranging from the test screenings getting bad ratings, and of course everything related to the reshoots and the rewrites and cutting specific scenes from the movie and replacing them with other scenes, and a lot of people believe that it spells doom for this movie, which everybody has their own opinion, and that is fine. In my point of view, I've actually gone over this past week, give or take, that a lot of bad decisions have been made by Lucasfilm and Disney for, of course, specific scenes that were cut from this movie. Now, on top of all of this, everything related to George Lucas, this is where things begin to get a little bit more hopeful for Episode 9. Now, specifically, it's explained that during the reshoots and the rewrites of the film back in August, September, and even October of this year, is when Disney and Lucasfilm made many adjustments to the second and third acts of the movie, where it's explained that recently Disney and Lucasfilm have been going through test screenings of certain cuts of the film, where specifically one of 3 endings that Disney wants to stick with is said that George Lucas is not impressed with, and how it was edited together and how some of the visual effects were established in the key shots of the movie. It's explained that Disney and Lucasfilm are currently in a phase of where they are actually trying to choose between the 3 different endings that are left from that was actually previously a total of 6 different endings of the film. It's described that George Lucas is currently working closely with many teams associated with post-production, and that George is described to be fixing the ending of the film before it arrives in theaters on December 19th of this year. Now, it's described that George Lucas will be making key decisions on which shots should be left in or out, and how the visual effects should be done for certain moments in the last frames of the third act of the movie. Now, it's said that Disney and Lucasfilm are currently in a phase of desperation of trying to get the movie done correctly for the fans, and that during the test screenings by JJ, Chris, Disney, and Lucasfilm are actually responding to George Lucas and his concerns at the ending of the movie in a positive sense. The ending is described to be the last part that Disney and Lucasfilm are working on around the clock, and are in a state of trying to work with George Lucas to get it cut together in a unique way that would serve as an authentic ending to the Star Wars film for the fans. Initially, before all of this, many of the George Lucas directed scenes were cut from the film, around 30% to be exact, while they were making adjustments to the middle and end of the movie, including cutting out the main villain known as the Dark Acolyte, to which George Lucas directed many scenes with that villain as well, fighting both Rey and Kylo Ren. The ending of the film is said to now be in George's hands, and that JJ and Chris Terrio are taking notes from George on how everything should be done, as well as Kathleen Kennedy over at Lucasfilm. With just 37 days to go, and even less than that if you count when Disney has to ship out the reels and the hard drives to theater chains around the world, this is of course of great importance right now for George to bring it all together for the final frames of the movie, where it's explained that Disney is allowing George to use some elements of the other 2 endings meshed with a third one, where the final ending would essentially be a combination of the final 3 remaining endings that they are actually all trying to choose from. Disney knows that this film is important and determines where the franchise will be in the near future, and not just with Disney Plus, but also with Star Wars films such as spin-offs and the new Star Wars trilogy, where George Lucas is also fixing elements with the character of Luke Skywalker as well. So let's go over a couple of parts about this. Now, you guys may have heard about the test screenings that took place a couple of days ago, and it really got bad feedback, and a lot of fans are actually taking this in a very negative way, believing that this movie is going to be dead on arrival, or is going to be a massive failure. Like I say, everybody's got their own opinion. That is perfectly fine. I myself feel that there is still some hope for this movie. The fact that they're still working on it, though, just 37 days before the release of the film, I think it does spell that Disney and Lucasfilm are really in trouble with trying to get this thing done on time and really trying to get it all done correctly. But the fact that George is now the one leading the ending of the film, you guys may have heard just a day or two ago that George was not happy with the ending of Episode 9. It most likely had to do with the ending of course, the leaks that we went over where Rey calls herself a Skywalker, and she just basically takes the Skywalker name, not that she's related to Luke, but she just takes the name, calls herself Rey Skywalker, and builds her own lightsaber out of the scrap pieces of Luke and Leia's lightsabers. Now, the thing about George, the fact that Disney and Lucasfilm are letting him personally lead the very ending of Episode 9, to me at least, it spells that Disney and Lucasfilm are really in a phase of desperation, which they are, by the way. I mean, right now, time is a big importance. You know, they have every single day that counts. A big lot, you know, a lot of elements of this movie have, you know, big portions that are being retouched by the visual effects team, and how George Lucas is requesting certain shots to be taken out and new ones to be put in. That really does spell a lot for Disney and Lucasfilm, and exactly how this movie has gone back and forth numerous times, not just with the rewrites that took place in late 2018 and more rewrites in mid-2019 of this year, but also the reshoots for the months of August, September, and October, where many Palpatine scenes were deleted and redone by calling in Ian McDiarmid to really redo those segments. Now, this movie, the fact that they're upping the budget of Episode 9 is another risk about the box office results. So let's go over this for a second here. Now, the box office results, by the way, are going to be a very big part of Disney determining on whether or not this is a successful movie. And a lot of this has to do with them upping the budget due to the reshoots, the rewrites, and the visual effects being redone specifically for the ending of the movie, give or take the last 10 to 15 minutes. And it really is a big deal because if you look at Solo: A Star Wars Story, how they reshot 80% of the film, and the film did not do well at the box office, that is ultimately what led Solo to failing at the box office itself, is because they had to use more money, up the budget by reshooting a majority of the film. And that's exactly what they're doing here to a certain extent. I wouldn't say it's anywhere near as extreme as Solo's, but it's still a specific percentage of, you know, reshoots that took place for The Rise of Skywalker. It's been estimated that around 20 to 30% has been reshot for The Rise of Skywalker, which really is a big deal. It really is a big deal. I mean, that's nearly half of what Solo: A Star Wars Story did, you know, a couple of years ago after The Last Jedi released back in December of 2017. Now, when we look at Disney and Lucasfilm, how they're turning their heads to George Lucas, like I say, it really shows us that they realized that this franchise all started with George, and George knows Star Wars best, right? He created A New Hope, he was involved with well, of course, Return of the Jedi, and then The Empire Strikes Back, sure, you know, George overlooked, you know, Lawrence Kasdan and Lee, but with this film, the fact that George was involved heavily directing and writing many scenes with JJ and Chris Terrio, and the fact that a good portion of those scenes directed by George Lucas were also cut, and how he is now handling the very ending of the movie, I gotta tell you, I mean, it really does spell that Disney and Lucasfilm need George on board in order to bring it all together. And that's exactly why I find hope in this movie and how well it may very well do at the box office. It all depends on how the movie's gonna flow, what decisions Disney and Lucasfilm made for the key characters like Rey, Kylo, Palpatine, and Luke, and even Leia at that. And, well, where it leaves the Skywalkers, right? We do know that this is, yes, the end of the Skywalker saga. Even JJ admitted that the ending is going to have some ambiguous moments as well as some, you know, moments of clarity, basically giving us some closure. And that's what George is tinkering with as we speak in order to change certain aspects of that. If I had to make a guess here, I really do believe that George is quite frustrated with the fact that he has to go into this last minute, you know, retouching the very ending of Episode 9 and doing everything around those lines just some time before the release on December 19th. Again, 37 days away. We've never heard anything like this before for a Star Wars movie, not even Rogue One. So, anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.